Hello my dear friends, you are on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 28th of April of 2023. Today we have a lot of updates, so let's start. And first we're going to start with a terrible piece of news that is coming from Uman, the town that's located in the central part of Ukraine. If you remember, if you know, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians launched a series of missile attacks all over the entire Ukraine. They attacked the Ukrainian position in Kiev, they attacked Ukrainian positions in Dnipro, Nikolaev, and Zaporozhye. And the Ukrainian sources are saying that as a result of air defense work, as a result of Russian missile attack, one of the rocket got the building inside of Uman, and as a result of that, the entire building was ruined. And the local sources are saying that by the evening, by 7 p.m. of the local time, they managed to get 19 bodies of killed people under the ruin of that building. The Russian sources are saying that that missile was going to the western part of Ukraine, but the Ukrainians, because of the fact that they got their air defense system inside the town, they were trying to shut down the rocket, and the air defense system didn't work properly, and as a result of that, the Ukrainians destroyed the building by themselves using the air defense system missile. For now, it's very difficult to determine and understand whose fault was that, but anyway, the Military Summary channel condemns any violence and the violence in Uman as well. But this is not the last piece of bad, terrible news. The Ukrainians, as a result of that situation in Uman, took a decision to make an act of revenge. And starting this morning, they started bombing and shelling the central part of Donetsk during the rush hour, when the most part of the people were located in the central part on their jobs and so on. And as a result of missile attack, one of the missiles got the taxi bus that was going through the Donetsk streets. And 8 people were killed in that taxi bus and they burned alive. There was 1 man, 6 women, and 1 young girl. This is a terrible day for the Ukrainians, either for the Ukrainians and the ex-Ukrainians, I'm talking about DPR and LPR citizens. I hope that we're not going to see such cases in the future, and one more time, Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Now let's go along the front lines, let's discuss the updates and events that took place, and the most important one are coming from Bakhmut, of course. The Russian sources map has been updated. As you can see, as a result of fierce clashings and fightings, the Russians managed to establish control over this college on the southern part of Bakhmut, and they finally and completely cut the road that connects Tchaikovskaya Street, this is Tchaikovskaya Street, that connected Ivanovskaya or Krasnaya with the western part of Bakhmut, with this western fortification. So let's go to the western sources map. This map has been updated as well. And I have added update from my side with this red cloud showing the real Russian progress in this area. As we can see, the Ukrainians, according to this map, and most of the maps confirms that during the previous week, the Russians made a few attacks in the direction of Khromovo, and some sources were saying that they captured the settlement, or at least a part of the settlement, but I believe that as a result of counter-offensive operation, the Ukrainians managed to push the Russians back, and currently Khromovo remains under Ukrainian control. So this is the Ukrainian main position. This is the vital position. This is their living position where they're able to keep their forces and not to be encircled. But by taking this Tchaikovskaya Street, their position will get worse, much worse. Currently, the Russians are going to complete the clearing of the southern part, and currently their main job is to establish control over this part of Bakhmut. And now this is not just a big problem for the Ukrainians in the western fortification, also taking control over this area is a very big problem for the Ukrainians who are currently located in Ivanovskaya, because recently, at least before today, the Russians were attacking Ivanovskaya just from the south, and they were storming these positions in front, and that was a very difficult operation. During the previous months, we remembered that the Russians lost their bridgehead inside of this forest after the Ukrainians launched their counter-offensive operation. So mainly the main thing that the Russians were able to achieve by attacking Ivanovskaya is just to pin down, to freeze the Ukrainians, and not to allow them to send reserves along N32 road in direction of Bakhmut. But currently, as soon as the Russians are able to clear this territory, they can continue advancing and move to the north along the forest lines in this area and start increase or create a point of pressure in direction of Ivanovska from the east. And after that, this will of course reduce the positions, the level of quality of Ukrainian positions in this town, and I expect that the Ukrainians can lose this town very fast and maybe even earlier than the fall of entire Bakhmut. The Russians continue advancing in the western part. There are still no updates or piece of information about the forces of Ukrainians in this part of Bakhmut. The last number we know is that there were 6,000 soldiers, but the 6,000 soldiers were located in Bakhmut when the Ukrainians controls most of the western part. They control the railroadways, and they control most of the southern part. Currently, from that territory, Ukrainians control just a half. So maybe there are less than 6,000 soldiers, but anyway, there are still soldiers. The Ukrainians are saying that they're almost every single day they try to evacuate as much as possible, but anyway, sooner or later, the Bakhmut is going to fall and some forces will be captured by the Russians. Furthermore, the Russians continue pressuring and pushing the Ukrainians in direction of Grigorievka and Bogdanovka. As we can see, according to the Western source map, the Russians managed to got the channel, and that forced the Ukrainians to stretch their forces. Currently, they need now not just keep their forces in Grigorievka, Bogdanovka, Minkovka, Rekhov-Vasilievka. Currently, the Ukrainians need to secure and protect the channel as well, because if the Russians are able to penetrate this area, then they will be able to start development their attack offensive operation in direction of Chasov Yar from the north. And I expect this operation in the future, but maybe a little bit later after the Russians establish control over Siversk and Siversk bridgehead. The Russians are saying that as a result of clashes on the Bakhmut front line, on Donetsk front line, including Bakhmut, the Ukrainians lost 350 soldiers, 15 armored vehicles, and 4 artillery systems. Furthermore, the Ukrainians lost 1 Raider INTPQ-15. Furthermore, as a result of missile attack, the Russians destroyed the Ukrainian headquarters, another headquarters in Konstantinovka, and the Russians are saying that that was a headquarters that was responsible for defense operation of Bakhmut. And as far as I remember, during the previous 2 weeks, this is the second headquarters that were responsible for Bakhmut that were destroyed by the Russians during this storming operation of Bakhmut. The Ukrainians are trying to send more and more reserves in direction of Krasnaya and in direction of Bogdanovka, but all their attempts are repulsed and it's just a waste of soldiers. Furthermore, some Ukrainian sources are saying that there are a lot of cases of rejecting and refusals of following the orders. And the main reason of that is that, if you remember, during the previous week, the head of Wagner, Prigozhin, ordered not to take prisoners and to kill everybody on the ground. That was his order, and most of the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian soldiers understand. They see the picture, they have the access to the same maps, and not just they have the access to the same maps, they can talk, they can speak with the soldiers, with other brigades and battalions, and they know the entire picture, and they understand if commanders take a decision to send them to protect the western part of Bakhmut, this is the ticket to the one way. There is no one way to go back. Wagners, according to Prigozhin, are not going to take anybody and to save anyone's life. They will kill everybody, according to the Wagner and Prigozhin. So that's why the level of refusals has been increased, and possibly we're going to see one more time some kind of strikes and meetings from the Ukrainian army in this area as well. Now we are going to Nikolaev. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the situation with the building inside of Nikolaev. We discussed about the report of Ministry of Defense about the destroying of the S-300 system, air defense systems in this area. Today the Russians provided more piece of information about that attack, and some Russian sources are saying that as a result of attack in this area, the Russians managed to destroy up to 20 higher officers in this area. The Russians haven't provided any information about their ranks, whether there was generals, colonels, or something else, whether there was NATO officers or just the Ukrainians. The only thing they added is that they destroyed up to 20 higher officers, those who were the holders and keepers of the plans of upcoming counteroffensive operation. This is a big disaster for the Ukrainians. I believe they, of course, should have some solution how to prevent these risks, but anyway, this is a very bad piece of news for the Ukrainians. Also, the Russians are saying that as a result of clashes on this bank of the Dnipro River, the Ukrainians lost 65 soldiers, 3 armored vehicles and 2 artillery systems. Furthermore, today the Ukrainians published video of how they started dropping water from this water reservoir to the south. So possibly this is exactly the beginning of the counteroffensive operation. We'll follow this situation. All these water reservoirs between dams were completely filled with water. We can say that they were overpopulated with water, if we can call like this. And now the Ukrainians started releasing the water, and the water goes to the south. We'll see whether it's just a regular situation or the Ukrainians are planning to flood the entire south of Kherson area, and after that to start the counteroffensive operation. Possibly this is the first sign of the beginning of something big from the Ukrainian side. And that's it for this short update. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.